Pastor Jamal Bryant is no stranger to controversy, but this time, the storm around him is bigger, louder, and far harder to ignore. From fiery sermons in the pulpit to explosive headlines across the internet, his name has once again been thrust into the spotlight. The church is buzzing, critics are circling, and the online world can't stop asking one burning question: how much more can Jamal Bryant's ministry withstand? How many scandals can one pastor really survive? What secrets are being hidden behind the pulpit? And why does it seem like Jamal Bryant's name keeps getting dragged back into drama that never goes away? Stay with me, because what we uncovered in this latest chapter will leave you absolutely stunned. Welcome back to the channel, the place where we dive deep into the controversies, scandals, and untold stories others are too afraid to touch. And today, we're taking on one of the most talked about figures in modern ministry, Pastor Jamal Bryant. For those who don't know, Bryant isn't just any preacher. He's a nationally recognized leader, the man at the helm of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Atlanta, and a voice that carries influence far beyond the four walls of the church. But with that influence has come a shadow, a string of scandals and controversies that seem to follow him year after year. And now, his latest scandal isn't just making headlines, it's reopening old wounds, reigniting heated debates, and leaving many people asking the tough question: can Jamal Bryant's ministry survive another storm? The focus is back on Bryant in a way that demands attention, from online conversation that won't stop to rumors circulating in the congregation. The problem is that this isn't simply another headline from a tabloid. The story shows something deeper when you examine the events in further detail: a pattern of conduct, a conflict between image and reality, and a red flag for megachurch leaders worldwide. We'll go over the specifics of this new scandal, its background, and the startling information that insiders claim is being concealed in this video. We'll look at Jamal Bryant's past controversies, the current response from his congregation, and above all, what this implies for New Birth Church's future and his ministry in general. We have a lot more to unpack than just one headline, so stay tuned. You'll understand why so many people believe that this scandal could be the one that ultimately transforms Pastor Jamal Bryant's life at the end. You must first grasp who Jamal Bryant is and why his name is so well known in the church and in general culture in order to comprehend why this most recent incident has created such a stir. Born in Baltimore, Maryland, Jamal Harrison Bryant came from a devoutly religious household. Both his mother, Reverend Cecilia Williams Bryant, and father, Bishop John Richard Bryant, were well-known figures in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. With that upbringing, Jamal was destined for a career in ministry. However, Bryant made it apparent early on that he wasn't just going to be another preacher. In contrast to those people who enter leadership roles covertly, his goal was to become a movement. Following his graduation from Morehouse College, a venerable school renowned for molding leaders, Bryant continued his education at Duke University before advancing his theological education. He had already established himself as someone who wasn't scared to combine politics, activism, and culture with faith by the time he assumed leadership. This is what made him unique. Jamal Bryant debuted on the national scene in the early 2000s. He was appointed pastor of Baltimore's Empowerment Temple Church, which he developed into one of the nation's fastest-growing congregations. He was a bold, charismatic, and unapologetically relevant preacher. He wasn't merely quoting the Bible. By addressing problems like systematic racism, economic injustice, and police brutality, he was connecting it to the hardships of Black America. For it, he was adored. Politicians, celebrities, and regular people were drawn to him because they believed he understood them. Bryant was more than just a preacher by his mid-30s. He was a name. He received national media attention, was asked to speak at prestigious gatherings, and was even regarded by some as the face of progressive Black church leadership in the future. However, scrutiny follows visibility. Furthermore, rumors concerning Jamal's private life started to circulate even in these early years. His reputation as an honest leader began to erode even as his ministry flourished. Nevertheless, his impact only increased. In 2018, Bryant was named the new senior pastor of Atlanta's New Birth Missionary Baptist Church. Following a string of ups and downs in Baltimore, this was no easy move. Bishop Eddie Long has made New Birth one of America's most influential megachurches. However, the church's credibility had fallen after Long's own scandals. Many questioned if New Birth could endure. It was thought that Jamal Bryant would bring it back to life, He appeared to be the ideal candidate to revive New Birth because of his ferocious sermons, youthful appeal, and capacity to unite faith and culture, and it did for a while. Attendance increased. His sermons created a lot of interest on social media. Once again, he seemed invincible. Here's the problem though. The strain to uphold an untouchable image gets unbearable when you have that much power and your platform is that public. Additionally, Bryant was going to be followed into Atlanta by the same personal scandals that had plagued him in Baltimore. Many people started asking the same question. Could Jamal Bryant's leadership and charisma make up for his personal shortcomings? Or would his willingness to live freely and boldly, the exact thing that made him relatable, be his undoing in the end? And because the most recent charges are not isolated occurrences, that is how today's controversy relates. They fit within a broader pattern that dates back several decades. To understand why this most recent episode is so devastating, we must first review the history of Jamal Bryant's earlier controversies before delving into the specifics of the present one. These days, Pastor Jamal Bryant's charisma, leadership, and ability to captivate others are frequently mentioned when discussing him. However, his name is also frequently associated with scandal. In actuality, this isn't the first instance. Not at all. If you go back in time, you'll see that he's almost always surrounded by controversy. Let's begin with his marriage, which is among the oldest and best documented troubles. Jamal Bryant, who many of you may recognize from Bravo's popular reality series, The Real Housewives of PTOAC, was married to Jamal Bryant. At first, their marriage seemed to be a power dynamic between a well-known preacher and a stunning, opinionated wife who supported him as the church's first lady. When together, they resembled the epitome of ministry success. However, that picture was short-lived. There were rumors circulating that Bryant had cheated. Later, Giselle acknowledged that adultery was a major factor in their marriage's dissolution. The fact that Bryant had fathered a kid outside of the marriage came to light after their divorce was finalized in 2009. Many people in the church found this to be terrible. How did a devout guy who taught decency, family, and integrity fail so blatantly in his own home? But Bryant persisted in preaching in spite of the scandal, and his story reflected that tenacity. He didn't run away from the scandal. Indeed, he frequently confronted it head-on, presenting his errors as a part of a greater narrative of atonement. This candor was refreshing to some. Others perceived it as a diversion. In any case, the incident increased his notoriety. However, that was just the start. His name was the subject of increasing accusations and speculations over time. Bryant was accused of having fathered another kid outside of marriage by a lady in 2013. Even though Bryant rejected some of the allegations at first, the rumors persisted. Every time, the public and church had to consider if a man who publicly battles this in his personal life could still be trusted to guide thousands of people spiritually. Then, in 2018, he relocated to New Birth. Some saw it as a new beginning, but new stories appeared almost instantly. Speculation regarding Bryant's dating life went viral on social media. Relationships with ladies in his church are suggested by some. When the two temporarily resumed their romance, Jamal Bryant's return to his life became newsworthy, particularly after the reunion ended due to additional accusations of infidelity. It's crucial to remember that each of these crises erodes public confidence. Bryant is seen by his followers as a flawed but approachable leader who owns up to his errors and keeps going. He is seen by his detractors as a dangerous example of the double standard, a pastor who lives a completely different reality during the week while preaching holiness on Sundays. Not to mention the sermons themselves. Bryant has occasionally sparked controversy from the pulpit by making statements that detractors have deemed careless or disrespectful. He borrowed a line from a song by Chris Brown in one notorious sermon, yelling, "These hoes ain't loyal." The statement was intended to make a point, but it instead incited indignation. He was charged by several with demeaning women and using profanity in a place of worship. Once more, Bryant's name was associated with controversy rather than inspiration when his sermon went viral. Each of these instances paints an image of a leader who appears to be constantly torn between his personal hardships and his vocation, rather than one singular error. This is important because the present controversy we are going to talk about is not isolated. It lands on a foundation that has already been undermined by years of embarrassing public blunders, strained relationships, and dubious choices. The cliffhanger is right here. If history is any guide, this most recent scandal has the potential to severely harm his reputation and ultimately cause his ministry to enter a crisis that even his charisma cannot resolve. Because this isn't simply another gossip about his personal life that we're hearing. It concerns whether the church itself can support him going forward and the legitimacy of his position as a leader. Let's now discuss the true cause of Jamal Bryant's name's recent global trend. The most recent scandal has social media going crazy and the Christian community buzzing. The charges this time are more serious than rumors. His congregation and the larger community are calling for answers because they have become so widely known. Numerous sources claim that Bryant is currently dealing with new accusations of inappropriate behavior, which raise doubts about his judgment as a public figure and spiritual leader. What precisely transpired then? According to reports, the preacher has once again been connected to alleged cross-border relationships that many people feel should never have happened given his position. According to some sources, these are not isolated instances, but rather are a part of a larger trend in which the boundaries between his personal and pastoral lives are becoming increasingly hazy. This is where it becomes even more concerning. People with ties to the church have allegedly expressed worries about favoritism, Bryant's dealings with female leaders, and how these relationships might be affecting not only his reputation but also the legitimacy of New Birth Church overall. This is extremely troubling for a church that is still getting over problems from its prior leadership. The public nature of this particular debate is what sets it apart. This time, the news is trending on social media sites like Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok, in contrast to some of his previous difficulties that largely circulated in gossip blogs or religious circles. Online debates, reaction videos, and memes have made it almost hard for the church to ignore this issue in silence. Furthermore, it will be challenging to contain the harm when a megarch leader is the subject of viral content. The pattern is indisputable, according to critics. They draw attention to the fact that whenever Jamal Bryant appears to be making headway in repairing his reputation, a new story surfaces that pulls him back into the spotlight. Conversely, supporters contend that Bryant is unfairly singled out because to his notoriety, implying that competitor churches and the media profit from seeing a prominent black pastor fail. The plot takes a darker turn at this point, though. According to several people familiar with the case, church cash and resources might have been involved in personal affairs. If confirmed, this accusation might have detrimental effects for the church's financial status as well as Bryant. The mere notion has fueled the fire with critics demanding responsibility and openness, even if nothing on this front has been confirmed. And consider this. The New Birth Missionary Baptist Church is not your typical church. Bishop Eddie Long used to lead this church before departing due to his personal scandals. Since then, the church's reputation has been precarious, and many people have viewed Jamal Bryant as its savior. Members are once again left questioning whether their leader is more of a burden than a benefit in light of this most recent issue. Bryant's own reaction heightens the stress. He has, at least thus far, generally refrained from speaking out against the accusations or made evasive remarks in public. Some see this as wisdom, refusing to respond to rumors in a way that would elevate them. Some view it as a form of avoidance, a tactic to weather the storm until people go on. Here's the issue, though. Scandals don't simply go away in the digital age of today. They never go away on the internet, reappearing whenever a new topic arises. This raises the question of how many more controversies Jamal Bryant can handle before his reputation as a preacher fully deteriorates. They don't want you to know this startling fact. Although the church leadership has made an effort to appear united, there are rumors of dissension within the board behind the scenes. According to reports, some people think it's time for new leadership because they think Bryant's personal life is taking over the church. Others contend that his removal would jeopardize the tenuous stability that the church has just now reclaimed. A tug of war is going on. One man, Jamal Bryant, is at the heart of it all. Personal preferences are no longer the only consideration here. The destiny of a whole congregation is at stake, a preacher whose every action is being closely scrutinized, and a church that once represented strength and influence in Atlanta. Naturally, the subject of how the congregation reacts to a controversy involving a pastor arises. Additionally, the responses to Pastor Jamal Bryant and New Birth Missionary Baptist Church have been as polarizing as one might anticipate. Some people who are steadfastly faithful, and some who are prepared to leave in exasperation. The atmosphere has changed within the walls of New Birth. After years of suffering under the late Bishop Eddie Long, Jamal Bryant was seen by many as a new beginning and an opportunity to move on. The pews were alive with enthusiasm, hope, and optimism when Bryant first came. However, you can sense that vitality beginning to wane as this most recent controversy develops. Some members are steadfastly devoted, maintaining that Bryant's charisma, sermons, and church vision greatly surpass his personal shortcomings and that no pastor is flawless. They contend that he is relatable, even human, because of his readiness to be open about his difficulties. They perceive this most recent round of charges as just another assault by those outside New Birth who are not interested in its success. However, it is not how everyone views it. Both newcomers and long-standing members of the congregation are increasingly becoming disillusioned. Their leader has been accused of failing to keep morals, integrity, and faithfulness on numerous occasions. Despite their having listened to sermons about these virtues, it's more than simply gossip to these members. It is a betrayal of confidence, and it's difficult to rebuild trust after it's been damaged. In online forums, after service private conversations, and Bible study groups, whispers have begun to proliferate. Some are quietly departing, preferring to worship somewhere else instead than waiting to see how events unfold. Others are demanding openness, encouraging church leaders to speak out against the accusations rather than keep quiet. Then there's the money aspect. Megachurches, such as New Birth, thrive on tithes and offerings in addition to attendance. The church may have serious difficulties if members start to withdraw their support, whether due to dissatisfaction or a lack of faith. Although official figures are still being closely guarded, several sources already indicate that giving has slowed as the issue becomes more widely known. The response has now been much more spectacular outside the church. This story has gone global on social media, with hashtags related to Jamal Bryant trending on several platforms. Critics leap at the chance to draw attention to what they perceive to be hypocrisy in contemporary megachurch culture. Debates concerning leadership, accountability, and the perils of prioritizing charismatic personalities over sound doctrine abound in comment sections. Even non-religious people are commenting, viewing the affair as yet another instance of unbridled power and influence. Furthermore, it's nearly impossible to control the narrative in today's culture once your name becomes a meme. This element, however, adds even more complexity to the repercussions. Pastor Bryant is more than that. He is a well-known individual with both cultural and political clout. He has advocated for justice and equality by speaking on national stages, participating in protest marches, and positioning himself as such. This implies that his missteps have an impact that extends well beyond Atlanta. His reputation in social justice and religious communities is on the line. Additionally, there are rumors that the church leadership is split behind the scenes. Some elders are determined to keep him safe because they think that if he were removed, the church would fall apart. Others think that carrying on under his direction would cause more harm than benefit in the long run. The destiny of New Birth itself may depend on this delicate balancing effort. The church waits for any indication of how Jamal Bryant will handle this storm for the time being. Will he acknowledge his errors? Will he deflect and proceed as he has done before? Or will this be the incident that ultimately results in a leadership change?